Welcome to our risk management presentation on the Dreamworld Thunder River Rapids ride. We will be investigating the circumstances of the incident and reviewing the issue to find reasonable conclusions as to how the risk management process could have avoided or eliminated the risks faced. On Tuesday, October the 25th, 2016, at 2:20 p.m, there was a fatal incident on the Thunder River Rapids ride at Dreamworld Theme Park located in the Gold Coast region of Queensland, Australia. The ride was 30 years old, having first started in 1986, and was considered to be safe for children and a great family ride.
Approximately 2:20 today, an incident occurred on the Thunder River Rapids ride, resulting in the tragic deaths of 4 people. At this stage, the park is closed, and Dreamworld is working closely with police and emergency services and authorities to establish the facts around the incident. We are deeply shocked and saddened by this, and our hearts and our thoughts go to the families involved and to their loved ones.
There were 6 people involved in the incident, with 2 children surviving and 4 adult fatalities. Queensland Police Assistant Commissioner Brian Codd was quoted on the 26th of October 2016 that it was a miracle the 2 children had survived the incident after seeing the CCTV footage of what had occurred, and that there will be an inquest to further investigate the cause of the 4 fatalities. The fatalities included Kate Goodchild and Luke Dorset, who were brother and sister. They were also travelling with Mr. Aragi, who was Mr. Dorset's partner. Cindy Lowe was from New Zealand and travelling independently of the other 3 victims. The victims had other family members in the park on the day that were witness to the incident, including Ms. Goodchild's 12-year-old daughter and Ms. Lowe's 10-year-old son, who survived the incident. The fatalities occurred after the fatal raft flipped because it hit the raft in front that was stuck due to the water level decrease after the failure of a water pump system. 2 riders were crushed on the slats and 2 fell through the slats and drowned. The incident occurred at the end of the ride, where the rafts were to be lifted onto a conveyor belt to then restart the ride loop. The conveyor belt has been said to have been unsafely modified, which contributed to the accident. Dreamworld, like many other theme parks, attempts to limit their liability in their terms and conditions included in their entry ticket. Specifically, the ticket states that the company takes all reasonable steps to provide you with a safe and enjoyable park. However, the company will not be liable for any person in respect of the loss of life or personal injury to any person, whether that loss, damage, or personal injury is caused by any person's negligence, including the negligence of the company or otherwise. This attempt at negating their responsibility in terms of negligence goes against legal precedents of duty of care under both Australian consumer law and civil liability law. The guarantee of skill and due care is inserted by law into every contract that is made for the supply of services in Australia. It covers all tourism suppliers, including theme parks, tour operators, transport and airline providers, hotels and resorts. The guarantee means suppliers must use an acceptable level of skill or technical knowledge when providing services and take all necessary care to avoid loss or damage when providing the service. Civil liability law provides a duty of care to avoid negligence. In Queensland, this is covered under the Civil Liability Act of 2003. There is an expectation that precautions are taken against foreseeable risk of harm that is significant. The precautions are considered to be those that a reasonable person would take to keep the public safe. According to the Coroner's Court of Queensland, the inquest will hear evidence that includes but is not limited to the construction, maintenance, safety measures, staffing, staff training, history and modifications of the ride. The regulatory environment and applicable standards applied to amusement park rides will also be considered, and whether changes need to be made in Queensland and Australia to avoid future tragic incidents. The inquest will also look at what safety measures and further actions can be introduced to prevent similar incidences. Risk management is driven by both internal and external drivers and works to mitigate risks associated with all facets of the business, including financial, marketplace, reputational, and infrastructure risks. It is an important process used to identify opportunities and minimising risks, and is seen as a significant component of good management. The Dreamworld incident is an example of how a lack of effective risk management can have lasting effects for all stakeholders. The coronial inquest has concluded hearing evidence, although has not yet released its findings. Court reporters covering the case have labelled the incident as an accident waiting to happen after evidence was heard about prior incidences, ongoing mechanical and operating issues, procedures that did not adequately show evidence of training and staff knowledge, and staff training that was found to be inadequate in an emergency when they were really needed. The coronial inquest also heard details that highlighted alarming issues concerning maintenance and risk management at the theme park, as well as issues from the government departments overseeing the park. With mandatory ride registration well overdue and known cutbacks on repairs in favour of new attractions, and most critically the alarm system that indicated water level issues being deliberately removed by the theme park, the incident was a perfect storm. The incident which occurred was foreseeable due to a number of reasons revealed in the inquest. There was a significant procedure failure when the ride had been subject to 2 water pump malfunctions hours before the incident occurred and should not have been in operation as per Dreamworld's ride policy, which states that if 2 malfunctions occur within a 24-hour period, the ride is to be temporarily shut down, while an engineering supervisor was to be informed and needed to give authorisation to reset the ride. The inquest also disclosed that Dreamworld staff were not completely sure of the ride's emergency stop button procedures. When the incident occurred, instead of pushing the main emergency stop button, the junior operator signalled the main control room, which used a secondary emergency stop button that does not work immediately. Senior Constable Stephen Cornish testified that if the main button had been used, it may have prevented the death of the 4 passengers, even when pushed after the collision occurred. This sequence of events highlights that Dreamworld staff were not prepared or equipped to handle an emergency situation and shows a significant flaw in the Dreamworld safety and training procedure. The most important consequence of the incident is the deaths of the victims and the devastating impact it has had on their families. Dreamworld has also suffered considerable damage as a result of the incident, as their approach to health and safety has come into question, and the loss of the public's trust, evident in the loss of park numbers in the months following. The Thunder River Rapids ride has been permanently decommissioned and demolished out of respect for the families, while the park was closed for an extended period in order for safety improvements to be addressed, resulting in a loss of revenue for the theme park. New industrial manslaughter laws were passed by the Queensland Government, which will see companies held accountable for deaths on site, and a coronial inquest has been held. The Thunder River Rapids ride had a history of malfunctions, including a raft being flipped over during a dry run in 2001, a collision of 3 rafts sending a passenger overboard in 2005 and in 2014, where a raft bottomed out on the conveyor belt due to a lack of water supply, resulting in contact with another raft. In the week of the incident, the water pump had broken down 5 times on the ride, and on the day of the incident had malfunctioned twice, once at 11:50 and again at 1:09. The water pump had again malfunctioned for a third time that day, just after 2 p.m, resulting in the deaths of the 4 passengers. Risk control, according to Safe Work Australia, means taking action to eliminate health and safety risks so far as is reasonably possible. If not possible, minimising them so far as is reasonably practical, ultimately with the aim to produce the best possible outcome in any given situation, and where possible eliminating the hazard, and in doing so eliminating the risk. The effect of uncertainty on objectives. According to Purdy, simply put, managing risk is a process of optimisation that makes the achievement of objectives more likely, and controls are the modifications of risk that come from out of risk treatment. Dreamworld and the ride had some inbuilt controls that included limitations to liability written into the terms and conditions of the ticket entry. The ride itself was meant to be staffed with 2 staff members, 1 senior and 1 junior. Staff were also trained to operate rides and said to be drilled in safety procedures. A lap belt was installed on the ride to avoid being tossed from the raft, and a ring around the raft absorbed impacts with walls and other rafts. There were also 2 override stop buttons, one that would stop the ride between 8 to 10 seconds and one that would work with 2 to 3 seconds. In consideration of the hierarchy of risk control, the most effective and ultimate goal is to eliminate and therefore remove the hazard. The issue with amusement park rides is that part of their thrill is a component of feeling risk by the participant, whilst the business is working to keep the participants safe and make profit. The Thunder River Rapid ride was seen as family friendly. The thrill was in bouncing and spinning around in the rapids with little to no expectation of injury or death. However, there were inherent risks associated with it that could only be eliminated by removing the ride, as it was a combination of heavy equipment and water that made the ride what it was. Substitution in the hierarchy of risk control, according to Johnson et al., involves substitution of greater risk with a lesser one. Insurance to limit financial risk is considered a substitution. Dreamworld and their trading company Ardent Leisure Limited saw considerable financial and reputational losses after the incident. Their share price saw a 60% drop in the 12 months to June 2017 and a 30.5% drop in attendance over the same period, according to Murray and Saunders. Engineering controls such as roll bars may have limited the injuries to the passengers who were crushed as the raft flipped. An automated emergency stop system that activated in situations like the water level dropping would have reduced the risk of the water pump malfunction becoming fatal. Separators between the rafts to stop collisions would also have meant that if there was a failure in the stopping mechanism, the rafts would not have collided, which caused the fatal raft to flip. Both of the latter engineering controls would have helped remove the human error element and could have saved all the passengers on board. Administrative controls include the rules and regulations that are abided by, whether through legal statute or through company policy. Staff training and the use of signage and warnings are also significant administrative controls. Finally, there is the option of using personal protective equipment. After the death of a young girl in England on a similar ride at the Drayton Manor Park in 2017, there have been calls for the Health and Safety Executive to consider mandatory life jackets in the UK. Life jackets are commonly used worldwide to protect individuals around water. Seatbelts are another piece of equipment that can be used to improve safety. If the belt had been more comprehensive than a lap belt, it may have saved the lives of 2 of the adults that fell in the water to their deaths. There had been safety recommendations made prior to the incident, which included the installation of automatic sensors to detect water levels and a single shutdown button installed on the main control panel. Considering the previous water pump failures that occurred earlier in the day, the risk of another pump failure should have been seen as highly probable. Maintenance just prior to the incident to repair poor wiring on the ride's control panel could have been conducted to not only improve and update the wiring, but to rule out the potential risk it had on causing any malfunctions. If monitoring was in place and updating various policies and procedures had been conducted following prior incidents, staff would have been better equipped. They would also have been better equipped if they were aware of prior incidences and trained to understand the dangers of low water levels and the possibility of rafts flipping. In conclusion, it is essential that there is an integrated framework for managing risk in the decision-making process. It should be noted that it is important for organisations to recognise and prioritise significant risks as well as identify the weakest critical controls. From evidence gathered, it appears that risk management of Ardent Leisure Limited and Dreamworld was not at a level that could truly keep the company, its employees or its guests safe. It is necessary for future success of the business includes better practices inclusive of improved communication and consultation, as well as monitoring and reviewing, which would have ultimately saved lives.